Hi everyone, this is Chef Mark at Appliance Factory Fine Lines. I'm in the Monogram kitchen with the Monogram pizza oven, going over ways you can use the Monogram Hearth Oven for things other than pizza. If you didn't catch the other two series videos that we made, I make some delicious sides and then I go over some tips and tricks. But now, for the main event, we're gonna cook some proteins in the oven. I got my long tongs, I got my sizzle pans, and I've got some beautiful chicken and steaks and some sides as well for dinner. I'm gonna set these off to the side and let's focus on the main events here. Okay, I've got some sirloin steaks and some steak tips, and I have a couple of chicken breasts. And I wanna cook these in a couple of different ways to see what really gives us the best product. So, again, keeping it nice and simple here, just the smallest amount of oil on this, just enough to kind of keep from sticking, little salt, little pepper. Now, I want to do these steaks in two different ways. One way is I'm going to take a sizzle pan, which is cold. I'm just going to make sure there's just a small amount of oil on there to kind of help prevent sticking. Get a fair amount of salt on that. And I'm going to slide that right into the pizza oven on this cold tray to see what kind of browning, caramelization we get. The other way I'm going to do this is the way I recommend is to put this on a preheated sizzle pan. So I got a couple of these sitting in the oven, getting hot, so that when I set this on the sizzle pan, you kind of get that sear, more of a traditional sear, almost like in a pan. It works great. I worked in an Italian restaurant years ago. It was a wood-burning oven, and we would sear off steaks, salmon, shrimp, pork, tons of proteins like this on these sizzle pans. Worked great. Did the wood offer a lot of flavor? Not really, less than you might think. But because the wood gets so hot, I don't think that it's not like that low and slow barbecue kind of flavor. So that being said, I find that the Monogram pizza oven actually really does act like a wood-burning oven in many respects as far as quality of the food, because it works great. It's visual cooking. I just love it. Okay, I'm gonna set this on a sizzle pan, and we're gonna set this in the oven. Follow me. Okay, you can see here I got a couple sizzle pans preheating. So I just got it sitting right in the oven, getting nice and hot. And I'm gonna take the steak and set it on there. Hear that sizzle? That's fantastic. That means that we've got a nicely preheated pan. Then also, let me slide this guy out. I've been preheating this for chicken. I'm just gonna take that out for the time being. And I'm gonna set this guy right next to it. I wanna get these in the same place in the oven, kind of into the back here. Okay, so I'm thinking that this steak on the right, which is on the preheated sizzle pan, is gonna take about 3 minutes before I flip it. We're gonna be looking for a nice sear. Also, it should unstick itself. It's stuck to the pan right now. But as it cooks and the fat renders, it will kind of pull itself away from the pan, just like in a saute pan or a cast iron pan, and allow us to have that kind of peel off the bottom. While we're waiting though, I want to show you a little tip here. So if we go to the home button, you can see that there are some presets. So I have it on custom, but it has presets for roasted fruit. I love to do roasted grapes in there. Roasted vegetables, I could have used that setting for when I did roasted vegetables in my last video, but I went with a custom. And then different kind of optimized recipes, New York style pizza, Napoleon pizza, which is very, very hot. I'm not quite sure what Detroit style pizza is. I'm from Cleveland, so I would never claim to know anything about Detroit. That's a joke. All right, here we go. I'm gonna set this back onto my custom setting, which is 1100 degrees on the dome and 600 degrees on the stone. Okay, now, it's been a couple minutes. Let's see what's happening here. Let's just do a quick check-in. It's still sticking just a touch. We're gonna give it a little bit more time, and it might be stuck. Oddly enough, the one that doesn't have the sear isn't sticking. I wouldn't have anticipated that. All right, let's give this a couple minutes to cook, and we'll check back in. While we're waiting for our steaks, I got some tips here that I pulled off the ends of those sirloin steaks. I'm just going to try a little salt, a little pepper, some onions. Boy, I wish I had some mushrooms. Doesn't that sound delicious? And I would say that given a couple minutes in the oven, we might be able to get kind of a nice, or peppers, make a pepper steak, something along those lines. Oh, and I have this half an onion left over, so I'm just gonna cut a small amount of that because I wanna see how this turns out as well. So I got a little bit of onion, a little bit of our flakes, pardon me, our extra virgin olive oil, crushed red pepper flakes. That's what I'm looking for. There we go. Onto a cold sizzle pan. We're gonna slide this in as well once we have a little bit of room in the oven to see how this turns out. And I'm gonna give this a little bit of lemon, just a small amount. I'm gonna set that right on there and roast that in with the tips. I like to do that because I find if you grill or roast a lemon, it changes the flavor. It's not as sharp of a flavor, and then when you squeeze it on top, it really adds a lot of moisture after the lemon's been cooked, without giving it that kind of astringency that maybe we're trying to avoid. So this is a little extra bonus. I'm excited to see how this turns out too. All right, that's my pan. I'm just kind of trying to keep that hot. Okay. So here's steak number one that has the preheat on it. Yes, and see how it released? I had to fight it just a touch, and you'll notice that I didn't come in underneath and tear. I actually squeezed it from the sides, which helped it release. You can hear that nice sizzle, and we got some color going on there as well. Could have used maybe a touch more oil, just a touch more. Okay, here's our other steak. Same amount of time. This is the one that has no preheat, and you can clearly see it does not have the same level of sear. I think by moving it from where it was cooking to a new spot, it might pick up some new heat in the oven. But I'm going to tell you right now, I really think, even though these, you can clearly see how much thicker this steak is. I kind of wish I had started them opposite. But I don't think this is going to have nearly the quality as this steak, having that preheated pan. All right, we're going to give that another minute, and then we're going to check on them. I think the one on the right is going to be the way to do it, for sure. You know what? While I'm standing here, I'm going to get our tips in here. I think this is actually going to turn out better this way, starting on a non-preheated pan, because we have some moisture components from the onion and the lemon, lots of extra virgin olive oil, salt, pepper on that. So I think that's actually going to be more along the lines of something that's going to be really delicious. All right, slot that back in there. I got 3 pans rocking now. Let's give it a few minutes. Okay, it's been a couple minutes here. Here's the steak that was on the right on the preheated pan. Here's the steak that was on the left on the non-preheated pan. You can see we're starting to get a little bit of color, but that's mainly because I kind of slid it over to a new hot spot to get some of the sear going. And although this steak is much bigger, which would account for some of the difference in cooking time, but not that much, really. So really it is the process of getting that nice pre-sear going, and we're never really gonna get good caramelization on that. So I'm gonna slide that guy back here. Let's take a closer look at our steak here. This is a sirloin steak. I would recommend avoiding ribeye steaks. If you have a really, really fatty protein, it could create a fire hazard inside the oven. And what'll happen is there's a door that actually will shut on the mouth of the oven. The oven will turn off, and a Monogram technician has got to come out to get the door open and to reset the oven. So if you have a beautiful, $50 ribeye steak in there, and it starts to catch on fire and that door shuts, you don't get your dinner. It's just going to sit there until a technician, a couple days will go by. Obviously your food's not good anymore. So I would recommend ribeyes. I would do fillets, New York strip steaks, sirloins. All of those steaks work very, very well. Salmon, even salmon is a touch on the fatty side, but there is a salmon setting. So I think they're confident with salmon being something that you can do in the oven. Okay, so we have nice searing on both sides, really. And it's a nice doneness. I would say it's going to be about medium. And we have some flavor left on that pan. If I was cooking for the family, I might throw some red wine on that, deglaze the pan right on the sizzle pan, maybe put it on my burner to kind of bring that to a simmer some fresh herbs, some butter off the heat to make a really nice classic sauce you can pour on top of your steak. All right, I hear some sizzling going on. I think that's our beef tips. Let's check it out. Okay. That sizzling is our sirloin, our other sirloin. And now that I flip that over, it's almost done. It's getting there. I'm interested to see the difference in flavor. Okay, here we go. Look at that, that's nice. Okay, these are almost done because I think they're cut so small. Watch this little trick here with my lemon. Get my lemon in there like so. Yeah, good. Okay. I think some mushrooms and some green peppers in there would have been really nice. I think that would have given us kind of like a little bit of a pepper steak. And finally, our sirloin. All right, I'm gonna pull the sirloin out. I can pull everything out. But first, I'm gonna start preheating my other sizzle pan because we're gonna do some chicken as well. Okay, let's take a look. I'm gonna start with this one. Okay. So you can clearly see the difference in quality of sear. I'm gonna let that rest for just a moment before we cut into it. Grab my beef tips. Those look nice. Those look very nice. Here we go. You can see what I'm doing here. When I cook on this, I tend to cook everything on these little sizzle pans, and as the food comes out, it's just time to eat. So if I had a little sizzle pan of vegetables and potatoes and some beef tips and some steaks and maybe a pizza and maybe a salmon fillet, and I love that. That way, you know, it only takes a few moments for everything, each individual component to cook, and then just bring it out and somebody's like, oh, that looks great, I'll have some of this. And it really is a nice way to have a lot of fellowship in the kitchen. All right, let's take a look here. Here is our sirloin. Oh, wow. Yes, okay. That's beautiful. I'm really happy with that color. That's a nice, looks like a medium rare interior. You know, sirloin's not famous for being the most tender steak in the world, but my knife is just going right through that. Okay, here we go. This actually turned out better than I expected. I gotta tell you, with the exception of maybe some of the searing, that Maillard effect, that caramelization of the proteins on the outside, I would say, gosh, they came out pretty similar. All right, I'm gonna taste here. The flavor is similar to the flavor you would have off a grilled steak. It's very nice. Let me see here. I expect them to taste pretty similar. They're pretty similar. This has a deeper flavor from the caramelization. This would be more like a steak that was maybe roasted in a traditional oven or maybe seared in a pan that didn't get hot enough. But they're both very good. I'm surprised at how much I like the quality of that steak. And finally, our tips. Let's take a look here. I'm just gonna grab one of these. Delicious, absolutely delicious. I would love to have that with maybe a side of my potatoes and vegetables as dinner. This was very quick and really economical as well, because you can pick up beef tips at the grocery store. They're typically much less expensive than a whole muscle steak. Onions, mushrooms, peppers, squeeze a lemon into the oven. That is delicious. I would say that's a winner for sure. That's a keeper. So I gotta tell you, I'm really impressed with everything. I was expecting this to be the clear winner, this to be just okay, the steak that didn't have the sear, and the tips just to be kind of a fun experiment. They're all fantastic. I'm gonna sit down and have dinner. What you're gonna do is click the subscribe button, and then you're gonna come back and help me cook some chicken in the oven. I've got a couple fun ways to do chicken in the Monogram pizza oven, the Hearth Oven. So make sure you tune in. Make sure you like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.